I received so many questions. Hey Dean, I want to learn F5 WAF or ASM. How can I build a lab? I want to create web security infrastructure with Web Application Firewall for practices. Can you please help me? Alright, in this video, I will provide you all of the things you need to build your own F5 ASM/WAF home lab. Take note, this is just about building a lab. We're not gonna discuss the concept of F5 BIG-IP or F5 Web Application Firewall. For those who are new to this channel, welcome. I am your host, name's Dean Armada, and I'm the internet action star. And on this channel, we talk about tech careers and certifications, trivia and tutorials in cybersecurity, trivia and tutorials in cloud and data center, and my journey as an IT instructor. So feel free to check out the rest of the channel and consider subscribing. Here is the topology, and as you can see, this is what we use in our F5 101 and 201 exam preparation courses. Assuming that you have already completed the Building F5 BIG-IP Lab for free, and for those who have not done yet, kindly check the link in the description below. I have a free tutorial on how to build F5 BIG-IP Lab for free, step by step. You can use VMware Workstation, ESXi, or EVE-NG. But here, we're gonna use VMware Workstation with nested ESXi. Okay, so we already have multiple web servers. For F5 303 or Web Application Firewall related lab, we need to have a dedicated web application. A web application that we will hack. So we'll have this new VM called Hack It website. It's actually an auction site that is vulnerable to many web attacks. So all we need to do is provision this virtual machine, connect it to the internal network. This is the same subnet with other nodes. It's actually 172.16.200.10/16. We'll create a pool and add this single server listening on port 80. Next, we're gonna create a virtual server with an IP address of 10.10.1.10 and associate the newly created pool. Then we'll test the application from the client PC. First, let's download auction virtual machine files. So kindly check the link in the description below. Now, assuming that you already downloaded the PHP auction VM resources, let's add our auction web server in our F5 BIG-IP lab. I'm here now in the nested ESXi running in VMware Workstation. Everything would be so smooth. Let's begin. Well, we have three VMs. The F5 BIG-IP, the training server where our pool members are residing, and the Windows client. The first thing I will do is I will click create VM, and I will select deploy a virtual machine from an OVF or OVA file, and I'm gonna hit next, and I'm gonna just drag and drop the two files, the PHP auction.2.1.ovf and the VMDK file. Again, this is the auction VM files/resources. Next is I will name this virtual machine as auction, and I'm gonna click next. Okay, and I will select the F5 storage that we have previously created. We still have 14 gig of free disk space. I'm gonna click next, and I will map this VM or connect it to the internal network. Okay, and I will leave the disk provisioning and power on automatically as default, and this one is checked. I'm gonna click next, and let's just review, and I think all good. I'm gonna click finish. Now, as you can see, it started provisioning this VM. Okay, it's already 10%, and it may take a minute or less, depends on how powerful your resources is. My PC is very powerful, so it will only take us, let's say, 30 seconds or less. We are now almost half, 47%, now 51%. Okay, so what we're gonna do next is, although it may reach 100% successful in few seconds, the status here doesn't look like it has successfully provisioned. Okay, it doesn't have this green triangle icon. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna refresh this page. Okay, so we're almost done. There you go, 100% complete there. And as you can see, it looks like it's still provisioning, it's still busy, but no, this is already complete. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna refresh this page, and as you can see, okay, the status is up and running. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna click this tick box and I'm gonna click console, open browser console. And as you can see, it's still not 100% available because it's still booting. But it'll only take, let's say, another 10 to 15 seconds before we can log in and access this virtual machine, this server. So let's wait. There you go. So we got the login prompt. I will log in as root, and then the password is default. There you go. I was able to log in. Now, the first thing I will do is I will verify the IP address, okay? Because this is a running virtual machine, a running web server. It already has an IP address of 10.128.1.150. But we need to change this. Why? Because our internal network starts with 172.16 and it's also /16. So to change this IP address, we need to go to etc sysconfig network scripts. Okay, so this is the directory. Now if I hit ls, there are many files. The only file that we need to change is ifconfig it 0. Okay, so I will edit it using BI. And what I'm gonna do is I will just simply change this IP address. It should be 172.16.200.10. And since we're using a /16 network, this should be 255.255.0.0. Now for the gateway, this is not mandatory and it's also commented with the hash sign. So I'll just edit it. I will not take it away. I will not enable it, but maybe later or in the future we need to enable it. At least we already have a complete or a correct IP address. So what I'm gonna do is I will configure the correct IP address for our default gateway, which is 172.16.1.33. And now I will save and quit. There you go. Now if I run again our ifconfig, the IP address is still 10.128.1.150. We still need to reset the network service. So what I'll do is I'm gonna reset it using this command, etc init/network, and I will add restart. And as you can see, it's shutting down the interfaces and it's bringing it up as well. And if I run ifconfig again, look, the IP address is now changed to 172.16.200.10. Alright, so we know that this is already connected to the internal network. From the F5 BIG-IP, we need to verify if we can reach this IP address. So I am gonna access our F5 BIG-IP via console, and I will ping 172.16.1.31. Let me ping itself first, the internal network or the internal self IP address, and it is reachable. So our internal self IP address is still running, still working properly. Now if I ping our auction VM, which is 172.16.200.10, look, okay, it is reachable. So that means we have successfully provisioned our auction server. Now, let's go to our F5 BIG-IP and create our virtual server and pools. So this is our existing virtual server. It is named HTTP. We're gonna create a new one. I'm gonna click create, and I will add a new VS. I will name it auction_VS, and I will specify a new destination address, which is 10.10.1.10, and it will listen on port 80. There you go. Next is I will add a pool. There's only one pool here, which is HTTP pool. This is not what we're gonna use. We're gonna create a new one. I will create a new pool named auction_pool, and I will use a help monitor HTTP, and I will also add the pool member IP address, which is 172.16.200.10. This is the IP address of our auction server, and it's also listening to port 80. I'm gonna click add, and then I will click finish. And as you can see, we already added or created the auction pool, and as you can see, it is already selected as a default pool for this virtual server. But we're not done yet. We still need to configure our source address translation, and we're gonna use SNAT automatic. Okay, so I'm gonna click finish, and as you can see, we have already created our virtual server associated the newly created pool. Now if I go to network map, as you can see, this is our newly created application auction with a VS IP address of 10.10.1.10 port 80, and this is the pool and pool members. Okay, it is online as we see the green circle status. Now let's go back to our ESXi. Okay, and let's test. What I'm gonna do is I will open our Windows client. Okay, I'm gonna click console, open browser console, and I will close this as we've already completed the auction virtual machine provisioning. So I will log in to our Windows client. Okay, password is password. There you go. And I will open our Mozilla Firefox. Okay, now I will type the IP address of our auction server, our auction VS, and as you can see, okay, we can now access the hack it yourself auction, which is PHP based. And there you go. The auction site is now working properly. But here's the next step. We still need to log in, to test some vulnerabilities. We need to test the application. We don't have user account yet. That is why we need to register. So I'm gonna register our first user. I will name it student1. The username will be student1, and the password will also be student1. Okay, so we'll make our lives easier. Okay, student1. The email address will be student1@gmail.com. The birthday, well, let's use it January 1st, 2000. The address, let's say BGC. Okay, and let's say Manila. State and CR, and country is, let's say, Philippines. There. The zip code is 1634. The telephone, let's use the telephone as 07, as well as the credit card number 07. And I'm gonna click submit query. There. So we have already created a new user. Now let's log in. Student1, and I will just paste student1. I will click go. Oops. Let's do that again. Student1. Click go. And as you can see, I was able to log in using the newly created account, student1. There are many ways to learn web application security, both on the offensive and defensive side. Building a virtual lab environment, this is just one of many options. But the advantage of this setup is it is designed for F5 303 exam preparation. But of course, you can also use various hacking tools to test your applications and the Web Application Firewall. We'll provide you more options on a separate video.